Red Sox Nation and sports fans alike, welcome back to the Red Sox Talk 50 show. I'm Joe Spinoza alongside Dan Marotti.
It's a pleasure to be here, Joe. I can't believe we're back together again this soon after the long hiatus we had of several months when you vanished into thin air like many that ghost you on Tinder.
Well, that was a low blow, Dan.
Well,
we're not getting into personal lives.
I can only state the facts.
We don't go into personal lives.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, apology accepted for the time being.
I'll confess it to my good friend, the Father Jurgen Leas, next time he's here.
Well, a lot of inside jokes going on here,
yes.
Folks. Guess you just have to come down to MMTV and bother Dan.
No, we don't need Dan.
To get a true idea of what goes around in the studio. This is a relatively quick span between shows.
You said every month, and here we are, I think, 6 days later.
Well, because I am going back to school soon, so I definitely wanted to make this our monthly show at least.
All right.
And I do have plans in the books. I've been doing a lot of baseball research myself alongside a good friend of mine, Sam Greenman, who will be coming on the show pretty soon. Dan is
I've heard a lot about him. I understand he's a gentleman.
I don't think I've talked that much about him.
All right, well.
Dan just likes to build everything up out of proportion. Maybe that's the wrestling promoter in him.
I don't know if that's true or false. I can neither confirm nor deny.
Well, let's get on to the baseball.
Right, what do we got?
What do you think of Manny Machado? Reportedly, now it's been refuted by his agent, but if we're going by the reports, the biggest offer that he has right now is 7 years, $175 million, which for those who can't do math is $25 million a year.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that it's that low, but not completely surprised because, as we discussed on the last show, these teams are realizing that these long contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars turn into a waste of money 90% of the time. But so why pay for Machado's decline?
But is it really Machado's decline? He's only 26 or 27 years old. He's one of the younger players to hit free agency.
Okay, let's say you gave him 10. Is he going to be the same guy at 36 that he is at 26?
No, but you also have to factor that in. And also, when you look at the inflation of the dollar just around the league, $27 million in 2029 is not $29 million in 2019. So that also adds to the actuarial risk factor of giving out a large contract. And either way, as Dan makes these annoying little sounds.
I think it's from the ventilation system.
Either way, any way you slice it, $25 million a year, especially for 7 years, he's looking at a bare minimum of, he was originally looking for a bare minimum of 10 years. So 7 years and going with a lower average annual value than expected, that has to be shocking. And I mentioned last time, Mookie Betts has to be looking in the mirror and saying, well, Giancarlo Stanton, before he hit free agency and even before he really popped as an MVP, took 13 years, $325. He's not getting close to that now. Harper and Machado, who, let's say I take even a smidgen of a step back, I'm right in their camp, if not worse. I could be looking at 7 years, $175 versus whatever the Red Sox offer me now. I think it would be really smart for him, like I said before, to reconsider this.
Like I said, with Mookie and the Red Sox, if I'm the GM, I'd be very comfortable extending 7 to 10 for Mookie. That would take him right into his early 30s, chance for him to maybe get another decent enough deal on the tail end of his career for tens of millions of dollars. Would I want to go 10? I don't want to go 10 with anybody, because then you're stuck with someone in a contract that history has shown doesn't work out.
Well, I think it really depends on your team. So look at the Rays. This is the most famous example. In 2008, like 2 days into his career, they extended Evan Longoria through his prime.
That's smart.
That's smart. But when you're a team like the Red Sox, look at how many bad contracts. Just one Pablo Sandoval contract can destroy an organization. The Red Sox not only gave out a Pablo Sandoval contract, they gave a Hanley Ramirez contract. They're paying Alan Craig. They're paying Rusney Castillo. They're paying even David Price, as good as he was this year in the playoffs. They're paying him $30 million. A lot of teams couldn't afford to pay $30 million for their number 3 starter.
Well, let me tell you, if they weren't able to get rid of Crawford and Gonzalez, what would those have turned into?
Yeah, Gonzalez would be, I think, off the books last year. That would have been his final year?
Yeah, last year was his final year. But, I mean, he wasn't happy in year 2. Imagine if they kept him around for the duration of the deal. It wouldn't have been pretty.
Or if we signed Ellsbury.
Oh, yeah. Let the Yankees eat that one.
So that's why I'm doing research into this along with Sam to study.
You and Greenberg.
Greenman.
Close.
As we look at the aging of players, is it better to go all in on the special, as we like to call them, or categorizing players, the Tier 5 guys, the MVP candidates at the start of their prime entering free agency? Is it better to spend a little bit more on them than go and sign the Crawfords and Ellsburys, who are in their late 20s as they hit free agency and just aren't that good at...
To me, it's as simple as the older the player, the less he is. You're not going to be getting prime production out of these guys, for the most part, after 33, 34
What about
years
Adrian
old.
Beltre?
There's an exception to every rule.
David Ortiz.
But 90% of the time, you're going to start to see a decline as the 30s progress.
Well, and when you mentioned the Red Sox, this year we went all out. So for a team, and Harper and Machado are totally different categories. These are some of the best players.
I mean, could you see Bryce Harper earning a 10-year contract? Of course. He's one of the faces of the sport. Machado, not as much.
He's still a great player.
He's a great player, but you know what? I think 7 years at 25 a year is a hell of a deal for him.
No, it's...
I'm surprised that it's that low, but
he has to
it
be
is what it
at
is.
Least, I was thinking at least the bare minimum for him was 8 for $240.
Why?
Because he's a 26-year-old superstar reaching the free agent market. That's very rare. He's one of the most productive players this early in his career.
Well, you know what that says to 32 Major League Baseball teams?
There's 32?
Wow. Joe, you humbled me. Well, I apologize. Hopefully you're not too insulted. You know what it says to 30 teams?
What?
Nobody cares.
Like Reno Chastain.
Correct. Nobody cares that he's a 26-year-old superstar in their prime. Or they don't care enough to offer him $30, $35 million a year. Simple.
I think
if no one's offering it, there's got to be a reason why. What's he going to do? Hold out?
It worked for Prince Fielder. He signed either late January or February. J.D. Martinez didn't work out for as well, but maybe it will depending on how the market shapes up, considering he got the opt-outs in his deal and it was front-loaded, so he still made close to market value.
The difference between those two is if you asked the average Joe on the street who Bryce Harper was, a good percentage of them might know from all the commercials that he's done and such. Manny Machado, if you went up to the average person on the street and says, do you know who Manny Machado is? I don't think they'd be as likely to know.
Doesn't mean he's not as great a player. You can say, Bryce Harper is probably more well-known than Mike Trout, and Mike Trout's a better player. A lot of average Joes don't know who Mike Trout is.
I don't know. Trout has been in a lot of TV commercials, a lot of magazine covers, and so on and so forth. I don't think Manny Machado would even be close when it comes to that type of star power.
But the thing is, he's still one of the most recognizable faces in the league. That's just
the baseball fans. Yeah.
What you just mentioned is how many of those guys did the average Joe know? Baseball, whether you like it or not, amongst my generation, amongst a lot of people, there's no LeBron James. People don't recognize these guys instantly like a Tom Brady or Steph Curry, like you see in the other sports.
You're right.
So that's just a baseball problem. The fact that Manny Machado isn't a household name amongst non-baseball fans, that's more of an indictment on the game than it is on him.
Well, okay, on the flip side, if you're a major league team that's interested in signing him, you want 10 years at $30 million? Okay, we'll give it to you because you want it. I mean, where is the logical reasoning behind that?
No, I'm not saying I'm not saying the teams are wrong. You want to get the player at the best deal that you want.
Right.
Scott Boras wanted 7 years for $210 for J.D. Martinez. The Red Sox got him for 5 for $110. Obviously, you want to maximize value because these guys are still getting paid tons of money. It's not like they're going broke. It's not like they're not going to be able to feed their kids like Latrell Sprewell said back in the day. The thing is, I'm just surprised that in a market that the marketplace is such that there are only 2 or 3 teams seriously considering these top-tier players, where in the past you would see 8 teams in on going back 10 years, Mark Teixeira, 7 teams in on Prince Fielder, and however many teams in on this free agent, that free agent.
Well, no, it's like I said, the teams have been burned now for the past 20 years or so on long-term contracts that don't pay out, and they eat up a significant portion of the payroll for the teams. It's not a win-win situation.
Well, not only that, if you look at the big players when it comes to the teams that are usually involved, Red Sox and Cubs, not really involved in the bidding. The Yankees, what are they doing? What are the New York Yankees doing?
I said on the last show, I thought that Machado would wind up a Yankee.
So did I.
I was surprised by that.
But they end up giving DJ LeMahieu a 2-year, $24 million deal. The Yankees had this great rebuild and accumulation of assets and prudent spending, not going in on these 5 to 7 year deals on Met players like they did with Ellsbury and McCann.
Well, I don't know if I should repeat myself again, but I think the Yankees are finally learning. These long-term contracts for mega bucks don't pan out.
Really? Tell that to their 2009 World Series championship.
Okay, that was a decade ago. I'm talking about 2019.
Tell that to the Boston Red Sox.
Well, that's not exactly the most free agent heavy team they've ever had.
David Price. Chris Sale wasn't a free agent signing, but it was still a huge move, giving up
Really,
prospects.
2 free agent signings that pop out for the Red
JD
Sox.
Martinez
in Price. Other than that,
Kimbrel,
they were traded for, they groomed themselves.
That's still a large investment.
What I'm saying is that the Yankees were a free agent heavy team, and a lot of those deals didn't work out the way they wanted them to. And maybe even the lauded New York Yankees are tired of overpaying and wasting their money on these guys, and I can't say I blame them. But
you look at all the potential they have with all these prospects, and they make little moves here and there. They make a little move. I mean, they're not little. They're just average-sized moves. They make a move here, and they get Todd Frazier and Robertson and Canely. And they make a move here, and they get a Happ, and a move here and McCutchen. And you say, oh, they're being prudent spending this money. Would you rather spend $29 million combined for J.A. Happ and DJ LeMahieu, who has like a 700 OPS outside of Coors Field or a 650 OPS outside of Coors Field? Or would you rather invest in Bryce Harper and Manny Machado? It's not like they're not spending money. They're just spreading out still sizable contracts. $17 million a year for a lot of teams is nothing to sneeze at. It's right around the qualifying offer. So it's a top tier salary. They're just giving it out to a bunch of mediocre players rather than just going in. You're the New York Yankees. You have close to infinite dollars. You've been spending really wisely. But then you give $9 million here to Brett Gardner and $17 million to Happ and $12 million to LeMahieu, and you spend a lot on Chapman. You give him $17 million a year. It just doesn't make sense the way they're allocating their money. And McCann's off the books. They did their fire sale a few years ago. Why aren't you going all in? And you trade for James Paxton. He's nice, but
maybe they have a different outlook now. And if they do, as much as I don't like the Yankees, I think it's a good thing. They did tremendously well in the initial years of those contracts with some of the great seasons they had in the latter part of last decade, even if they didn't win at all. But in the end, I think this decade could have been far more successful for them if they weren't burdened by some of these players that they wish they could have unloaded.
Well, that goes back to you're signing the – I mean, when we're talking in the grand scheme of things, they're top tier, but amongst the league's elite, you're signing second-tier guys. You're signing a 37-year-old Carlos Beltran. You're signing an injury-riddled Jacoby Ellsbury who really had one great season that merited that contract. You're signing the Brian McCanns. When they went out, Mark Teixeira, he was bad in the last 2 years, but if you have a guy who's an MVP candidate for the first 2 or 3 years, then a borderline all-star for the next 2 or 3, and then breaks down in the final 2 years of the deal, that's a success. CC Sabathia is still a
But going into
pitcher.
it, if you know that you're going to get 2 years of nothing, why as the owner would you want to invest in that?
Because
it's a bad investment.
No, it's not. It's not a bad investment at all.
No, it's a great investment.
If David
Ellsbury's been a great investment.
No, because he gave them no years of great performance. Mark Teixeira was second in MVP voting his first year and won them a World Series championship. That's a good investment. Like you said, John Lackey, for example, I think that was a good investment because you don't win the 2013 World Series without John Lackey.
If you have a World Series to show for it, you have a better argument to make.
And the Yankees do. Mark Teixeira was second in MVP voting. CC Sabathia was top 5 in Cy Young voting, I believe. And he gave them...
I don't think Sabathia was worth it. He was with them in 2009, though,
He was great. Great in the postseason. He's worth it.
You got to remember, Lackey was a 5-year deal which was a shorter time period than Sabathia.
Sabathia was a 7-year deal with an opt-out after 3 or 4, and then he signed another one. Now, the second Sabathia deal wasn't worth it. When they re-signed
I just don't
him
like
again.
him. I think he's lazy. I thought he came across
Oh, you
as
don't like the bunting
a
thing.
crybaby. Oh, you can't bunt on me. I'm overweight and I can't bend. Well, you know what? You're supposed to be a professional athlete. I thought Jim Rice was going to go down to New York and beat the hell out of him.
Well,
Jim Rice is a man.
Jim Rice is a man.
He had a little Pa Simcoe in him.
Oh, I don't know about that.
All right.
I definitely think that these free agents, the top-tier guys, definitely deserve their money.
If I'm an owner looking at it as a business, I say, you know what? Bryce Harper brings appeal beyond what he brings to the Major League Baseball team. There's someone you can say that's worth the megabucks. What he's going to wind up getting, I don't know. I read on, I think it was MLB.com, that the Nationals increased their offer to pass the 10 years, $30 million mark for him. And you know what? If he can get a little more scratch than that, good for him. Machado, and you know, you hate to say forget about the economics, but in this case, maybe you can, where you have an idiot in his free agent year that on television says, well, I'm not really a hustling guy. So you're telling me, oh, geez, give him 10 years at $30 million a year for a guy that says he isn't even hustling at 26. I think that made him look bad, even if maybe what he said was misinterpreted.
That shouldn't cost him $50 million.
If he claims he's not going to hustle, that shouldn't cost him any money.
I said it shouldn't cost him $50 to $100 million.
Why?
Because he's still immensely talented. He can play 2 positions at a very high level. He can hit for power. He can hit for average. He can steal bases. He is a 5-tool player just entering his prime. 10 years, and I know you said it's a different game, but 5 to 10 years ago, he would have gotten so many offers.
Exactly.
So quickly.
You're right. You're right about that.
This is where the league is going to enter a problem. There might be a strike. The CBA, we mentioned this before, so not to beat a dead horse, but the luxury tax acts as this phantom cap, but the penalties are not harsh whatsoever. The Red Sox exceeded it by so much. They went to the highest threshold you could possibly go, and they only paid $12 million. Like I mentioned before, we're not going to. I don't want to.
Like I said, you need a floor, a bare minimum that these teams have to spend. There has to be structure to it when they decide to tank and rebuild and restructure, however you want to reword it. And, you know, I'm sure it would take a lot of back and forth, but I think the salary cap increasing would be a good thing. Get rid of the penalties for the most part. Encourage these teams that want to consistently tank and rebuild. Why financially reward them to present their fan base with a piss-poor product and sending them on the road 81 times a year to present a piss-poor product to teams like the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Cubs that continually invest in their team to have their fans have to see a AAA quality team.
And another aspect of the offseason that has been overlooked because it happened such a long time ago was Patrick Corbin. Patrick Corbin was arguably the top pitcher on the market, and he took the first, it seemed like he signed within a few weeks of the start of free agency, took the first deal available, and he signed for what, 6 years, 140? I thought that was an overpay, but
was it 140? I thought it was 120. Maybe you're right.
I think it's 140.
Okay.
So
well, great for him.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have given him that deal.
I wouldn't have either. So don't you think it is smarter to take, I'm not saying take the first deal you see if it's egregious, but if it's close to what you want, I think it's best to take that first deal.
If I was an owner or a general manager, I would look at Machado as a problem. His personality sucks, and then he made that stupid statement at the worst time possible, at a time when he was on national television as the World Series was progressing throughout the postseason. That was just a bad decision on him, and I think it's costing him. Again, with Harper, if I needed a center fielder or someone I could transition to a corner spot, maybe as he gets a little older and the deal continues, I wouldn't have a problem, depending upon my market, at 10 years for big money.
Now,
I think you get more value out of Harper than you would at Machado.
You mentioned the Machado, the comments, yada, yada, this and that. I think it comes down to, I'd say there are 5 teams with lots of dough who have historically spent a lot of money. Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Dodgers, and Phillies. Phillies during.
Well, the Phillies are just starting to come back to life again after a few
Yeah.
years hitting the snooze button.
But
you
towards
could
the
throw
latter-
San Francisco in. They're usually
San
pretty
Francisco.
high up there. Washington.
Washington,
Detroit was before they started their plunge into
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, but so Detroit's tanking. Washington, they invested money in Corbin, and then
Well, I mean, the Nationals, even if they don't re-sign Harper, you can't look at them as a team that isn't spending money.
yeah. So, but out of those 5 main teams, and if you want to throw in those other 2 teams, a lot of them are out of the market. The Cubs are kind of out of the market. The Red Sox are. The Yankees have kind of gone sideways a ways too. So that makes room for a team like the White Sox to pounce on. And that's where I think it comes down to, because it comes down to the amount of teams interested. It's a free market.
Or need.
Machado can fill any need on a team. I'm sure every team in the league, other than maybe the Red Sox, even the Red Sox could use him at third base.
Okay, let's look at the Yankees. I have not 100% sure what their payroll will be this year. Let's just be reasonable and say 200 million.
200, yeah.
Let's just say 200. You're talking about one player, if they sign him for the money he's looking at, eating up 15% of that payroll. Is he worth it? Can you get something almost as good for a better price? Like the Red Sox argument that they made last year with Hosmer compared to Moreland, you could get Moreland for, I don't know, $15 million cheaper than what Hosmer signed for, and the statistics...
Per year.
Right. And the statistics weren't that different.
No, I agree. Now, what the Yankees would be able to do is, since they traded a lot of their prospects, their farm system itself, it's kind of barren now with the Paxton trade. Clint Frazier's value is very diminished. They traded Fowler, Mateo, and Kaprielian. They traded Rutherford. They traded Dylan Tate. They traded all these guys. So they have Florial and Abreu. Their system isn't as loaded as it was. But you have Andujar. I think Glaber's off the table. Now, what signing Machado does is it allows you to get a guy who's, I think, the same age as Aaron Judge, or maybe even a little bit, maybe a year older, but pretty much in the same age group as your core, your Stantons, your Judges, Gary Sanchez, that whole core that you want to build around. It allows you to get a guy who's still in his prime, and then you can take a guy like Miguel Andujar, who, as great as he was, is a liability on the field. You can trade him and get a pitcher, and you can build a pitching staff that is really elite. Because right now you have Severino, and Severino's good, but I don't trust him that much. You have Paxton.
That rotation leaves a lot to be desired.
So what
it's
you
not
do,
one of the most fearsome rotations they've ever had.
So what you would do is you would use that money. They're the Yankees. They have so much money. Ellsbury's going to be off the books in a year. There's not going to be a free agent class like this. You're going to have Arenado coming up next year. Now, I'm always skeptical of getting guys coming from Colorado because Coors Field effect is real. So I don't know what Nolan Arenado will do outside of Coors Field. I think signing a Machado and using an Andujar, a Frazier.
Well, you got to look at it like this too. You want to
deal for a
mention the Emperor to the Throne coming up over there in New York. This is someone they're going to have control over his cost to some degree for the next, I don't remember when he was called up, but 4 or 5 seasons. Those 4 or 5 seasons that they're paying him a few $1 million for at least the arbitration year, or the pre-arbitration years, would be $125, $150 million or so they'd spend on Machado.
But you're also using that.
And then you're going to pay big money again as there is the likely decline of his talents as he gets older, that you're going to be paying mega bucks for.
But since he hit free agency so young, I don't think there will be a steep decline for another 4 years.
I don't think, honestly, for even Machado, as much as I don't like him, I would be fine with the 7 or 8 year deal for him. It ending at 34?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go as high as 30 million.
I think teams should be a lot more willing to go high average annual values than go more years. I think.
I agree with that.
I think 7 years.
Less risk.
I think 7 years, 210 is probably a better investment than 10 years, 250.
Unless you're talking about a top tier 1 or 2% or so to speak, I wouldn't give a 10-year contract to any of them.
Yeah, that's where you have the Harpers, the Trouts.
Right, and I think Harper is one of those guys.
And the way his market's developing, is just shocking. So
Which one are you talking about now, Machado?
both.
All right, well,
Because
Harper has the money on the table. Machado doesn't. Two different things.
You're underselling Machado, though. You're underselling how good Manny Machado is. And I think if you want to talk about value, I think getting Machado, who statistically has in some seasons been better, outside of Harper's 2015 season, I think has been better, if you want to just go from a statistical standpoint. Getting him, if you can get him for 7 years, 200, 190, 200, compared to 10 years, 320 for Harper, I'd take Machado.
I think compared to the expectation going into free agency, it does come across as a deal.
Yeah. That's why I still think the Yankees could sweep.
I think with the White Sox offer, I'd say fits just right almost.
That's too little. 175 is way too little.
Maybe if I'm his agent, we try and up it to 8 for 200.
8 to 20. That if the Yankee if
I'm the owner or the general manager, I'm going to say why. No one else wants to give it to you.
Exactly. No.
Am I supposed to be Santa Claus and just hand out tens of millions of dollars?
And that's why I think a team like the Yankees could still sweep in and go, all right, we'll give you 8 for 200. That's still a bargain. 8 for 200.
I can't see the Yankees wanting to invest that right with what they already have this offseason.
What did they?
Well, I'm just saying they have filled the spots.
Okay, but
with not $500,000 rookies.
Okay, but $12 million to the Yankees, and it's not like it's a long-term $12 million. It's 2 years, $12 million.
Are you going to trade someone you just signed as a free agent?
Why not?
I don't think that would come across well.
They're the Yankees. They don't care. They don't care what they do to DJ LeMahieu.
Well, maybe the way they have acted the past few years, maybe it's a new look for the Yankees. They're willing to spend. They're willing to spend big, but they're not willing to spend stupid. And I think that's a good thing.
But I think they are spending stupidly. That's what I think. I
don't necessarily disagree with your point of view, but with what those two want is going to hinder a franchise for the most part.
I disagree because you have to think. They should be spending now while they have their Andújars, their Torreses, their Severinos, their Judges, their Sanchezes. All these guys on such low salary deals. That's how the Red Sox were able to sign David Price, J.D. Martinez, trade for Chris Sale. It's when you have Mookie Betts, Bogarts, Benintendi, Bradley, go down the list. All these really good young players on pre-arbitration years, and then even first-year arbitration is still very underpaid. So having those guys on those deals allows you to splurge. That's how, again, to make a cross-sport comparison, in the NFL, the Eagles and the Rams were able to build these really expensive, well-rounded teams around their Jared Goffs and Carson Wentz type guys because they have these low-priced players at the main position of quarterback. And that's a salary cap league, but if you still want to act as if the luxury tax threshold is that salary cap. Same thing in the NBA. The Celtics were able to go out there and sign Al Horford and Gordon Hayward because they have the Jaylen Browns, Jason Tatums, Terry Roziers on rookie term deals. Yep. This is the time to spend. You don't want to get hamstrung and then you have to give out, even during arbitration, Gleyber Torres, here's $20 million. Miguel Andújar, here's $15 million. And you have to start paying these guys, that's when you run into problems. While you have these guys making peanuts, give your money to the generational talent instead of dinking and dunking and a little bit to you, and to these guys in their 30s.
I'd be interested in their minds when they met with them, where they were comfortable going in terms of years and finances. I never read anything in the media about what those numbers were, but I'd be interested to know.
Fascinating to see the Yankees just make these.
I thought New York was going to be where he was going to wind up. I thought where he wanted to be was New York, and the Yankees have been known to cough up the money.
Well, I think this is enough free agent talk right now.
We really only spoke about two people, and really only one.
But isn't that all that matters right now? I mean, maybe Kimbrel matters a little bit. Dallas Keuchel, you haven't heard a thing about him. They're saying the Phillies are looking at him, Kimbrel, and Harper. I don't know.
I think that's nonsense.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, that's why it's so tough to talk right now because it's really been 3 months of you have the Corbin signing, which feels like ages ago. You have the Paxton signing that feels like ages ago, and then the Paxton trade, and then you have the Robinson Cano Edwin Diaz trade, which feels like ages ago.
Your good friend Frank, I'm sure, was happy about that trade.
Shout out Frank Fleming. Hope to see him at Citi Field.
You're looking forward to that.
Over the summer, yeah.
Frank Fleming is a man that you have a great affinity for, a man that you wake up to every day like many males your age would like to wake up to perhaps a fine young lady in their bed. You enjoy your morning videos with Frank Fleming.
I wouldn't compare it to that. I would say it's more of the way people of the older generation woke up to the Boston Globe or Boston Herald.
That's your Frank.
I get my news in the morning. I watch Tank's vlog, and I get the wrap-up for the day in sports. So it's like watching, if you're a conservative, Fox News, and if you're on that side, you watch fake news.
You love Frank.
I love Frank.
Well, he would be. I'd love to see you two chew the fat.
I don't know what that means.
Chew the fat? You've never heard that term?
I've never heard that term.
Talk.
Oh.
Talk.
I thought that was a weight joke about Frank, who was on a weight loss
No,
journey.
it has nothing to do with that.
I'm very proud of Frank. He has lost, I think, like 40 or 50 pounds.
It isn't easy.
Nope.
I've been in those shoes. Maybe not quite that big, but I've been in those shoes.
Well,
he's always welcome on this program. I'd love to hear his analysis of the Mets in 2019.
well, we'll see if
They could be a team that I think would be real hit or miss.
No, and the Mets will probably be miss.
Well, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
They went from having Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, Matt Harvey, Zach Wheeler, Steven Matz, all on rookie deals, all under the age of like 28, and all they have left is deGrom and Syndergaard.
Well, it looked like it could have been the best starting rotation in baseball for several years.
Yeah.
Just didn't work out.
So let's talk about one thing, even though, Dan, although your football and other sports other than baseball aren't your forte,
I'm a fan.
He's a fan.
Baseball, I study. Two different things.
you have to be excited about the New England Patriots being in their 8th straight AFC Championship game.
I have to say I'm a little surprised. Not to be Debbie Downer, so to speak, but it wasn't the easiest year to watch them. I thought you had a team like either Baltimore or I almost said San Diego.
It is. I
the
still
Los
call them San
Angeles
Diego.
Chargers coming in. I thought those were going to be two pretty tough challenges. But again, it showed, you know what, that mastermind there, the hoodie himself, Bill Belichick, they came up with a hell of a game plan. I was surprised the game began with them choosing to receive. And they just, I think, threw the Chargers off for the duration, and it showed. It was not, even though the end result, what was it, 41-28?
Yeah, that was
it wasn't even
stomping.
that close.
It was a stomping.
It was over at halftime.
Yeah. I love this. And the Patriots have always said, I heard Mike Giardi talk about how Rodney Harrison, even when the Patriots were in the peak dynasty in 04 and they were steamrolling everyone, they still found a way to make them feel like underdogs. And now since they actually are underdogs, if you want to go by the technical standards of Vegas not being favored.
What was the line for the Patriots-Chargers game?
I
Do you
think
remember?
the Patriots -4.5, so they were favorites. But right now against the Chiefs, they are underdogs.
Yes, they should be.
And they love that. And you see Edelman posting that bet against us. Brady hears everything. I love this. This is, I'm not going to say this is the most excited I've been because every postseason I get excited, but I want to see this, and I want to see us go into Kansas City, and I want to see that fat walrus Andy Reid choke again. I want to see the Patriots up 31-17 with 8 minutes left, and I want to see Mahomes execute this beautiful drive, and they score a touchdown, but then they look, and it's 1 minute and 56 seconds left on the clock, and they try to do an onside kick, and it's no good, and the Patriots just kneel it out, and it's too little too late for Andy Reid, as it always is, or have them get the ball back with 20 seconds left and have Mahomes throw a pick like Donovan McNabb did in 2005. That was that Super Bowl 39. I mean, I was young, but I still watched the film.
I think we should toss this one out to our good friend Cecil the Lion, a major Patriots fan. Who do you have Sunday, Cecil, New England or Kansas City? New England. All the way.
All the way.
Just like Mr. Super Bowl himself wanted to go all the way.
Again, more inside jokes from Dan the Man Marotti.
I try.
What do you think, Dan? New England or Kansas City?
I'd say on paper I'd go with Kansas City, but after watching the game last weekend, it just shows to me, you know, maybe they looked at the schedule. Maybe they had a game plan in mind that says, you know what, maybe we don't have to go full throttle to get a 2 seed. Maybe
They
held a little back.
They were a Gronk missed tackle and an awful just play design against Miami.
14-2.
Well, from 12-4.
Well, no, I mean, there were a couple of games they could have won, not just Miami.
Yeah.
They could have easily finished 14-2 with a little luck.
And then, but I will say, as much as that Miami loss hurt, and it'll probably hurt a whole lot more if we go into Arrowhead and lose in a way, kind of going back to 2015 when we lost to the Broncos in Mile High, we started off the year 10-0, and then go 2-4 at the end and kind of falter, and then we come up this short just because it felt like a home field advantage difference, that 2-point loss. And if it's a similar type thing and on Sunday, then I'll feel the same way. But if we go on to win, which I'm not going to predict because it's just bad luck, but which I'm hoping for, which I believe can happen, that loss will be a good thing because we got the introduction into our lives of Ralph from Belleville, who Frank's friend.
Oh,
and we got the
okay.
victory worm.
I remember who you
We got
mean
the victory
now.
worm. We got Ralph, and we got a dynamic duo, the Belt brothers, because they wear electric belts. We got that. So that loss spawned a whole new wave of entertainment to Barstool Sports.
Well, you know, to me, I think the peak of the NFL season are the past 2 weekends we've had. To me, it goes almost downhill from there. You have 2 weekends in a row, 4 elimination games. It doesn't get better to me than those 2 games on a Saturday, 2 games on a Sunday. Now, it is what it is.
Well, when your team's playing in it, Championship Sunday has always been my favorite when the Patriots play, and that's been the past 8. Can you believe that? No team does this. You even go. I was going through. We were talking about this when we were talking about. I don't think I talked about it on this show, but I talked about it with my friend who was dissing Kirk Cousins, and saying, "Oh, the Vikings were in the NFC Championship game and lost." Think about this: the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. They barely slid into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth. The Falcons barely slid into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth, and they were awful this year with the same cast of characters and same quarterback. Look at the Panthers. The Panthers went from being in the Super Bowl 15-1 to being out of the playoffs and being terrible. You go down the list. Year before the Panthers was the Seahawks, and they've slid back. Every team slides back. The Broncos, I know Peyton Manning retired, but he was still awful. They win the Super Bowl, then they go on to suck. All these teams, they go on these runs. Seattle looked like the most viable team other than the Patriots to come up in the past half decade or so. And they've slid back to being just borderline playoff team. And the Patriots just consistently every year, even they didn't win 12 games for the first time in 9 years. They won 11-5. And that's our bad year. Our bad year is 11-5. We have not won less than 10 games in the season since 2002. I was 3 years old. This is insane. And we really have to just be grateful, and we have to thank Tom Brady.
It's coming to an end much sooner than later, so I do hope the fans appreciate, especially this year when they have a real chance to do something spectacular.
So you think the Patriots will win?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I have better thoughts towards them after seeing what happened in Foxborough last week.
But you still think Kansas City?
Unless they have some magic that they've been holding up their sleeves, and Bill Belichick has been known to have some awfully long sleeves, the momentum doesn't feel like it's there for me. I hope I'm wrong.
I don't know.
I'd love to be wrong.
I just feel something special in this team that even in past years where we've obviously always been really good and great, I just haven't felt. I just feel something special with this team. I'm not going to predict anything because Kansas City is great.
It's almost like when our technical director, Dutch, goes up to Lake Winnipesaukee in the summer. He feels something special.
Another inside joke, Dan. Why are you teasing our audience like that?
Well, I don't know if the individuals we're talking about would like the whole story to be told. But
so why even reference it?
Just enough to put some smiles on people's faces.
Well, I think that this Patriots team has a great chance of winning.
You don't think they're going to turn into a cataplasma?
I don't know if they're going to turn into a cataplasma.
We'll have to wait and see.
But again, Kansas City, great team. Last thing I wanted to bring up about this.
NFC, who do you have?
NFC? It's a tough one. Just by default, Saints.
I have to go with the New Orleans Saints. I enjoyed the city a great deal this past spring. And New Orleans just seems like the team to beat. They feel like they have that momentum.
We'll see. You never know in the NFL. Any given Sunday, anything can happen. I've had discussions with this amongst people I know. Who would you rather have? One game, Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce? Who's the better tight end in this game?
The Rob Gronkowski of 2019? Not Rob Gronkowski.
I agree. I think
at this point.
I think Gronk's done. I still think that maybe for one game, or hopefully 2, if we go on to advance. He can turn back the hands of time, especially if he can get by this weekend and then to have 2 weeks off to really prepare. I don't want to
He's battle tested. I mean, anything can happen. It wouldn't surprise me to have him, you know, almost like when you talk about an old person when they're getting ready to die, they have a few good days left.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there is that for Gronkowski. It'd be great to see, especially if he played his last game in Foxborough last week.
And another thing, before we wrap up, a key thing for the Patriots, because whenever we play the Chiefs, we get destroyed. We did get destroyed by Kareem Hunt. And obviously, he is no longer in the league due to a domestic violence incident. Or not domestic violence, just abuse against women. It was at a hotel, so it's not domestic violence. But it's under that umbrella of abuse, of violence against women.
Yes.
So, not to make light of that situation, but just on the field, I do think that really helps the Patriots because it allows them, before they had to focus, there were 3 dangerous weapons that Mahomes would have: Hunt, Hill, and Kelsey.
Makes it a little easier taking one of those options
now,
away.
I think you focus on trying to shut down Tyreek Hill and then do the best you can against Kelsey. And then if Mahomes plays mistake-free, it'll be tough. Last time, he threw 2 interceptions. I think it's going to be trying to force Mahomes into mistake because he's still a first-year starting quarterback. As great as he's been, probably the best first-year starting quarterback we've ever seen with 50 touchdowns. He's still a
He
first.
could be rattled. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So
he's not battle tested like we just mentioned Gronkowski, even though he's closer to the end than the beginning.
I think Brady's battle tested.
Oh, absolutely.
He's very battle tested. We're still here, and hopefully we'll still be here when we do our show. I don't know if I'll be back before the Super Bowl. Maybe. Okay, here's my declaration. If the Patriots win on Sunday, I will be here the Saturday before the Super Bowl. One of the 2.
Thank God. I was getting a little worried there for a minute. Well, that's good to know. But I do have to ask you, Joe, before we leave, what do you think about what appears to be almost a little infighting with the Celtics?
Oh, this team. I feel like Frank right now. I think, nothing looks right. Rozier said it. They're too talented. Their problem is they have too many talented players. There's after Kyrie, when you look after Kyrie, there's no real delineation between their next 7 or 8 guys, not even in terms of talent, but just in terms of rank on the team. Because Horford, even though I think he's probably the most important player, he's taken a step back, unfortunately. Now, I still think he can ramp it up in the playoffs. That's what he's always done. Every year and I read an article in The Ringer today by Jonathan Sharks. What gets overlooked is Al Horford has been in the past 4 Eastern Conference Finals. The Eastern Conference has literally been Al Horford crushing everyone on his way to losing to LeBron James, which there's no shame in. If you're losing to arguably the greatest player of all time, but you are clearly the second best player in the conference, in my opinion, whether it's not by statistics, but just by impact on the floor. Al isn't a guy to demand the spotlight, and he's a lead by example guy, but he's not a vocal leader in the sense where he's going to say, I'm going to take over, I need the ball. So you have that when you have your veteran all-star not speaking up in a way to take rank. And then you have Hayward coming off his injury. And even if he has a feeling like, hey, I've been in the league now for 8 years and I'm making this much money and I've been an all-star, his play isn't he couldn't speak up if he tried because his play has been so subpar. Then you have Tatum, who, if you want to just go by pure talent, is probably the second best player, but he's still young. And you have Brown. And then you have Rozier, who talks a big game, but he hasn't backed it up this year. And you have Smart. And you have all these really good players, but you don't have that pecking order like you do in Golden State.
You'll probably say I'm crazy, but I thought the best unit I saw start and play as a team was, I don't remember the opponent, but a couple of weeks ago when it was a lineup without Irving, Morris, or Hayward.
Now, what I think is that
they played very fluidly.
They do. I think that Morris, as good as he's been, he is a ball stopper. Even when he hits his shots, I still don't like watching him play because he just takes these awful contested long twos, and it's like ugly to watch. He's a player who's really good on a team, like, for example, Houston right now, with Chris Paul being hurt, Clint Capella, and Eric Gordon being hurt. As great as James Harden's been, in the 8 to 12 minutes a night where Harden isn't playing, you get a guy like Morris out there who can get you a bucket. But on this team, you don't need another guy to score 15 points a game. You need players who play within the flow of the team, and that's why Horford's so great. And I still think Irving is great when surrounded by the right type of players.
Where the Celtics are about halfway through the season, maybe right at halfway, where do you see them finishing?
It depends on what moves they make. I think
If they keep the team as is right now.
They don't make a single move. I still think
The top half of the Eastern in the playoffs?
I think that between 3 and 5, and I still think they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, depending on when they play Toronto.
Maybe they could gel late. You never know.
I think you trade Rozier, trade Morris, like I said. You get some of the chefs out of the kitchen because they have so many talented guys. You give a bigger role to Brown, to Tatum. Hayward's getting more healthy. And you allow the guys to play the roles that they're meant to play because rest is good. And it's good for especially a guy like Horford who's 32 and in his 12th year and you want to preserve for the playoffs. But Jaylen Brown is 22 years old with fresh young legs.
Right.
I think it stifles him more to play him 25 minutes a night than to say, kid, go out there and give us 32, 33 minutes a night and start. Yeah. I think he's the type of guy who, with the more reps he gets, the better. And rather than giving all these guys roles where they all have a chance to play but not have a chance to thrive, you trim some of the fat and have an 8-man rotation like you do in the playoffs where guys can really go out there than having a 10, 11-man rotation.
What amused me was that apparently Cecil disagreed. As you were saying that, he just got up and walked out of the studio like he was Bad News Brown at Survivor Series 88. Are you all right, Cecil?
Yeah, there's a weird noise coming outside.
Oh, well, that's all right. We're in here.
Well, I think that's a perfect cue to end the show.
What about the hockey minute with Drew?
Hockey is...
All right, we'll just wait for him then.
Yeah, you can listen to Drew babble about hockey. That's irrelevant.
All right, then. Take it home, brother.
For Dan Marotti, I'm Joe Spinoza. Thank you for tuning in to Sox Talk 50 with a little Sports Talk 50 minute from Dan Marotti. Some inside jokes, some humor, some laughs, some frank. Thanks, folks.
Now it's time for some Tinder. Until we speak again, you and yours, be well.